Good evening. So, what can I tell you about whiskey today? Well, I am the Dram Druid, and my name is Amy. And first of all, I should clarify for those of you who do not know what a dram is. I have had arguments about this in the past. A dram is actually an eighth of an ounce. Most of us don't drink whiskey in that small of a quantity, and so some people call it a pour, some people call it a dram, but regardless, it's always a good thing. Some people may ask why I think I'm qualified to talk about whiskey. Well, are any of us? There's so many different things to know about whiskey, but I will say this. A long time ago, when I was about 25, I went to an Islay Scotch tasting. I thought the stuff was absolutely horrid and proceeded not to drink whiskey for a very long time. But when I was 40, I came back to it. And I decided it was lovely, including the Islay Scotches. And now I've been doing whiskey tastings here and there for quite a long time. And I read a lot about whiskey. I drink whiskey when I can. Not to excess, but certainly to the level of enjoyment. And so that's my rationalization for doing this. I thought we could have a conversation. So if you are enjoying my comments, if you disagree with me or you do agree with me, feel free to like and subscribe and we can continue the conversation. So today we are going to feature a new one. And so I'll be honest with you, I am drinking this, I am tasting this with you for the very first time. This is a whiskey that I have seen on the shelves for quite a while. And I am a sucker for a beautiful bottle. And they can be all different shapes. But this one was just so happy. It was just such a lovely little playful shape that I just had to bring it home with me. So, the Clark and Sheffield. I have to admit, I thought these were the names of people, so I was prepared to do research on these two distinguished characters. I'm sure they are people, but that is not why it was called the Clark and Sheffield. This is, for some of you I'm sure are aware of this, the Clark and Sheffield, it is an intersection in Chicago. And Harold Binfield in 1948 started a general store, sold produce, pints of liquor, potatoes. I'm not sure if he actually distilled his potatoes to the point of being vodka, but he had his store there. And so 1948, he started it. They now actually still have a Binny's, a little bit short of there. So Clark and Sheffield is about a block close to Wrigley Field. So it's in that old Chicago neighborhood. And now I believe the Binny's, they were actually called the Gold Star Liquors, I believe was their original name. But now they're largely an Illinois liquor store. Big, some people might call them a big box, but they really do go for quality. And they're all throughout Illinois. I believe there's 33 at this point in time. Harold is no longer with us. He died in 1995, and even the Wine Spectator noted his passing. So kind of a big guy in the industry. And his son, his son Michael actually worked for him for a while, but then got fired by his father. I believe the issue was tardiness. There's a wonderful Chicago Tribune article from 2016 if you want to get a flavor of Michael, who is the current CEO. And I'll tell you, you see the picture of him and you want to have a pour with him. He just seems like a really down-to-earth guy and very, very much cares about the quality of Binny's and what they serve. I've always been kind of a purist about my whiskey. So this is actually, a Chicago, Illinois liquor, but it is distilled in Kentucky, which of course makes it a true bourbon. Once upon a time, we really did say it had to be made in Kentucky for bourbon. Now we've gone more to the point that we say if it's 51% corn, it's bourbon. But I'm a purist about my bourbon and my whiskey in general. I don't tend to add water. So I was thinking about Chicago is where my family harkens from. My father was there, and I had a dear uncle, Uncle Stanley, who was an absolute purist about all things. And I thought, so it makes sense that I'm a purist about not watering down my liquor, and yet I'm very exploratory. I don't go with, I look at rankings of whiskey, but oftentimes I don't agree with them. And so I'm kind of encouraging us to have a conversation and say, there's a lot of great whiskeys that are out there that are happening, and we should embrace that. But then I realized that, that we shouldn't be purists, but I, of course, myself am a purist. And so today I'm going to drink this Both Neat, which is my standard way of drinking whiskey, and then I'm going to add water, which I'll talk a little bit about. But first of all, and if you haven't done a lot of whiskey tasting, by all means, sniff it first, because it will always give you a hint as to what's going to happen. And it kind of prepares your taste buds. This has a really nice nose. Really gets you up there. Maybe a little flowery. More flowery, I'd say, than creamy. I did read a review on this, and they implied that they experienced a little oiliness, and as you can see, it has pretty good legs, so I can understand that descriptor. But the taste. Mmm. Really gets you at the back of the throat. Grabs your attention. I like a whiskey that grabs your attention. I'm not a big fan of things that are just super smooth. It's dangerous if things are super smooth. You just want to drink more of it. But it's a very nice whiskey. In the review I read, they talked about cherries. I don't taste the cherries. They mentioned lime. That I'm getting. I'm getting a limey feeling. And of course, nice woody notes. And you can always tell if you're going to get woody notes also by the color of your whiskey. The more it's been exposed to the wood, the darker it gets. The true purists in the whiskey world will not, there's no artificial coloring added to bourbon. So the way it gets its coloring is it is charred in new American oak barrels. That's where the color comes from. And so I always say we should toast to the United States of America, because it is from us that comes the great charred oak barrels. Not just that bourbon is aged in, but that Scotch is aged in. Everybody's aging their whiskeys in our barrels. But to be bourbon, it has to be a first-time oak barrel. So very nice whiskey. But I'm gonna see. Let's just try this. We're gonna be try to be a little less of the purist that I am to try this. One of the things that they say water does to whiskey is it opens up more flowery notes. This is not something I look for in my whiskey. I don't care for flowery notes, but the water does bring out more of that oily texture, which is really interesting. But all in all, I'm still going to say I'm a purist. I feel like it becomes a sharper tang on the tongue when I add the water. So I don't appreciate that as much. This is a single barrel, which means it was not blended. No barrels were blended together to get this whiskey. So it's a single barrel. Right now it's also select, which means, that they chose it very carefully. It's more of a marketing term than anything else. So I'm not sure if I don't take it too seriously. What else can I tell you about this whiskey? The Binsteins now have been running this. I hope they make it to 100 years, but they've been since 1948. I was really intrigued. So Binstein is a German name, and I'm thinking that he may have come over as there was a huge emigration in about just about that time after World War II, and so he may have been involved in that. I'm not real sure, but it's a worthy, and it's so this is in honor of Binny's, which of course is here in Illinois is very big, and yeah, Clark and Sheffield. Oh, also Clark and Sheffield, they ran their business out of a flat iron, which is basically a triangular building. And I'll be honest with you, I have heard of flat irons. I grew up in a town that had a flat iron building. It was a little bar. And I never did the math on that because, of course, I'm one of those weird individuals who actually still irons clothes. And I don't call mine a flat iron. But what they're comparing it to is indeed an iron. Why they would compare it to a flat iron, considering most of them are 6 stories high or higher, I'm not real sure. But that Flatiron building is no longer there. In fact, a PNC Bank is there now. But I went in on Google Maps and was able to see the intersection, which is why I know that Binny's is now just a couple blocks from there. But in honor of Binny's, they bottled this, and I think they're a very. I read a little bit about the company, and I'll tell you, I hope they continue to succeed because their philosophy as a company and their philosophy of excellence is something to support. So there you go, the Clark and Sheffield, put out by Binny's Liquors here in Illinois.